What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY in the overall market. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward and why Tesla and the market are selling off quite a bit. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, so as far as Tesla's going, there's a downtrend right here. We had this resistance at this 490 area. We came down, made a move up only to get a rejection. We're continuing to make lower highs. Now, Tesla came down to the support that I called out. I mentioned to everyone that we might be looking for essentially this 394 area. And if we lost that, we'd be looking for a bigger dip. So far, Tesla saw some buyers defend right over there, but the question is what's going to happen from this point on. As a reminder, I went over this news already, and that's the news that Tesla's facing a big US probe right now by the NHTSA over driverless vehicle summon features. This allows Tesla to park and do all kinds of different things without there being any drivers. But the issue is that the NHTSA has claimed that there are reports that there have been accidents involving this, so that's why they're doing this big investigation. This is not the best of news for Tesla. I do want to say, like I've said before, Tesla's not perfect and there are improvements that have to be made with their technologies. But it's very important to remember that despite this, Tesla is still a work in progress. The long term is still very bright despite the short term downside. Now, for the short term, yes, Tesla could look bearish. I do admit that we could see more downside for the markets. But that's not just because of this news for Tesla. The whole market is coming down amidst different pieces of news. There's this new piece of news that came out about the Fed's 2025 schedule, and they're essentially anticipating that as far as the market is going to go, we're looking for a big change from what we saw from beforehand. So, with the Fed, okay, we have another FOMC meeting in January, and it turns out the Fed is not expected to raise or cut rates. They're expected to keep everything steady for the first meeting. And then there is a excuse me, there's about an even chance they do some kind of cuts in March, not a guarantee. And then they may have to hold rates steady in May and June. And then there could be another cut in July or September. So that's what the schedule is suggesting. No cuts in January and possibly a cut in March. That's like a 50-50 right now. We're going to have to see based off inflationary data. And then there may not be another cut after that until like July or September. So you guys can see that the Fed is not expected to cut too much. During the last couple of FOMC meetings, they've been cutting and cutting and cutting. But going forward, they may not cut nearly as much in 2025, according to these reports. When this came out, the market did not have a very positive reaction. There was also this reaction to the data, which everything was very close to expectations. This is not the bigger factor that caused this, but just know the ISM services PMI was aligned with expectations. The jobs numbers were quite decent. Job openings were above expectations. And then the ISM services business activity, new orders and prices were all decent. However, I do want to say that employment was showing some weakness right over here. There's a little bit of weakness on the employment end. And then ISM services prices was above expectations, showing signs that prices have gone up, at least to some extent, for the sector. So that's pretty much it. The majority of the data was aligned with expectations and okay, but some things were a little bit more negative. With that being said, what do I see for this market moving forward? Obviously, Tesla is on a bit of a downtrend. We're not looking the best so far. We are favoring downside. But we're going to be watching the very, very bottom of this trend line. Can Tesla hold very close to where this support is? The main support is currently around this 385 area. We got to hold around 385 at the very least. If we can't, there's going to be a bigger downside. For now, when you go to the 30 minutes time frame on Tesla, you will see that we are technically looking a bit more bearish, and there's going to be a risk of us coming down to fill that imbalance over there. So I think that there's going to be a risk of more potential downside if we continue. We have to try to reclaim 402 to turn back up. If not, this may continue to fall back down to about 394. And if that fails us, I'm looking for us to get very close to 390. Then this trend line of support around 385. So watch those supports. Just know there is a risk of Tesla dipping a little bit lower. Looking at the trend, it's continuing to make lower highs, and there's no true sign of a big bounce yet. It could still fall lower, so just be very careful. Unless we reclaim 402, I still favor that view. Looking at SPY, the same thing is going on. Now, check this out, guys, okay? When I zoom out on the 4-hour time frame, you will see that we have a very, very clear head and shoulders. Now, is it 100% confirmed? Not guaranteed yet, but there is that possibility that this is going to pan out. There's this big left shoulder here. There's a head and there's a right shoulder. If we manage to bounce and we reclaim 602, we could try to invalidate this. If we can't do that, we're looking at support currently around 591 at our 200 EMA. If that fails us, I'm looking for us to retest not just 590, I think 589 is going to be the next support. That's what I'm looking out for. And if that fails us, we're looking for the bottom of this trend line. That's going to be very close to like the 586 area to hold. If not, this is going to be dumping a lot lower and the right shoulder is going to pan out. So the right shoulder is not officially leading to a big sell-off, a cliff dive, or anything like that. We're not officially doing that yet, but there is a risk that if we lose key support. Right now, watch the 591 zone as our support. That's our 200 EMA. And then to get back up, you want to get back above at least 594, the 50 EMA. If not, SPY is still favoring downside, and we are favoring 590 or below if we can't reclaim 594. So keep that in mind. We do look a bit more bearish. ES, exact same setup. There's a left shoulder, there's a head, and then there's a right shoulder. We're making lower highs here. We got to hold back above 6,000. Otherwise, this is favoring, more lows, such as 59.80. If that fails us, we could be dipping all the way down towards 59.50 or so. So around that area. So we're making lower highs, and this does favor downside a little bit more. And we'll have to see what happens after this. For other factors out here, we have Nvidia. So as far as Nvidia goes, we're trying to hold above 150. We're not able to hold above that, and this rejected so far. So we kind of pushed above this only to reject. We had 146 as our support. We lost this, so now our next support's at 140 flat. We got to hold 140. Right now, if we lose 140, we're looking for a dip to 138 all over again. This was looking strong in the beginning, but I did call out the gap below in my earlier video. I said to be careful depending on what the data gives us. And as you can see, we got this rejection. So if we manage to reclaim 146, we will turn back up. If we lose 140, we turn back down. Otherwise, we're range bound between those levels. The downside risk is still there looking at the market, so just be careful, guys. For Bitcoin, the same thing is going on. We were not able to hold above 100,000. We're holding 98,000 barely. If that does not hold, we're looking for 96,500 as our target. Still looks a bit more bearish to me. For others out there, we have NQ. I mentioned that I was looking for a potential move back down to 21,500. I said to watch and see what the data leads to. As you guys can see, we're riding this trend line down. We were not able to hold above it. So the the odds do favor downside a little bit more for 21,400. We got to reclaim 21,600. Otherwise, we favor downside. The QQQ has the same thing. We're making lower highs. We got to get back above 520. Otherwise, we could be dipping to not only 518 but 515 ish all over again. If that fails us, I'm looking for 512. So it looks a little bit more bearish. We got to reclaim 520. Otherwise, we favor downside. For Apple, we're on a bit of a downside move right over here. We're making lower highs so far. We're looking at this support around this 241 area. We have resistance at 246. So we're range bound right now. Apple's barely holding 241, but watch that as critical support. That's our 200 EMA. I was saying that this was looking like it wanted to base at the very least. That's what's happening so far. So we're range bound between 246 and about 241, but there is still a risk of this dipping closer to 241 if we can't get back above 246. So just keep that in mind. For Palantir, we look weaker, unfortunately. I did mention yesterday it might be dipping lower. The cup and handle has failed, so now this is going to be at risk of retesting 70. If that fails us, we're looking for a bigger dip to 68. For the IWM Russell 2000, we are rejecting. We need to try to get back above 228. I mentioned that it might try to push a bit, then watch to see if it gets a rejection. So far, it rejected. So I want to see it reclaim 225. Otherwise, it favors all the way down to about 220. So keep that in mind, guys. 220 looks very probable. For Coinbase, we look a little bit weaker. We got to hold 272. Otherwise, this favors 260 or so. Looks a little bit weaker to me. Amazon pushed up to 228, forming a double top. It had to hold above this. Otherwise, I was talking about the downside for 224. We got to get back above 224. Otherwise, we could be dumping to about 220, especially as we have this gap down here. So I see some weakness. Meta was range bound, but instead of holding the range, we rejected, so we lost 620. We have to see if we can reclaim 620 or not. Otherwise, I do see this retesting 605 or below. This had a nice double bottom, but just keep in mind that if we can't get back above 620, we're looking for a move back down towards 612 and eventually like the 605 area. For Microsoft, we're technically on a downtrend. We have to get back above 430. Otherwise, we favor some more downside, especially as you have this gap to fill down here. There's a nice gap down here around the 424 area, so watch for that. And then Google got this pump to about 202 and rejected. So we have to see if we can hold above 200. Otherwise, we could be dumping back down towards not only 198, but we could be dumping closer to like 195. So just keep that in mind as we have like a double top here. So we did not hold above 200 quite well. We touched it only to reject. So there could be a move back down. We're range bound on Google so far, so just keep that in mind. But there's going to be a risk of us coming back down to 195 if we can't hold 198. So keep that in mind. Anyways, as far as the market in Tesla goes, there is still weakness that's perpetuating. Tesla's trying to hold near 394, very close to that range we were talking about. If that does not hold, there's going to be a risk of more downside, and the downside is still there as Tesla's technically on a downtrend. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. That's your update for now. I'll be back in a couple of hours for another update, and peace out.